Listen to me. Please listen. If you don't, if you won't, if you fail to understand, then the same incredible terror that's menacing me will strike at you!
Hey guys, we're back. As you could probably tell from the sloppy opening, that was a little rushed to get back here. Anyway, the reason that I wanted to do this, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, a little bit more, I should say, about psychiatry. You know, I've done this in the past. Oh, nice. Okay. I've done this in the past, but I saw something the other day. It was an article, and I saved the link, and then I wasn't able to find it. I'm going to see if I can find it real quick here. It was a article, one of these puff piece PR newswire places where Scientology and other people can just dump news. Like you can plan an article on this thing. They're called Newswire or PR Wire or whatever. And then you can write an article saying that you were just recently, you can quote the fact that you're in the news. It's just a phony way of creating, I'm looking for this. Oh, here it is. Here it is. So I can't really put it up, but I can read it to you. Basically, it says Citizens Commission. I've got to have to read it off my phone. I couldn't find it on my computer. Citizens Commission on Human Rights is more determined than ever to end coercive psychiatric practices. And then it goes on to talk about, there's a UN declaration of a need for reforms in mental health. And I got to tell you, my head just exploded because as we have found out more this year than any other year about the kinds of abusive practices in the church, and then here they are parading this, their mental health reform initiative, which is essentially this fake thing. Although, to be fair, they have shut some hospitals down, private psychiatric hospitals that were engaged in really egregious crime. And, they gotten a few mental health workers thrown in jail who committed crimes and blah, blah, blah. But the fact of the matter is what they're doing is they're trying to paint the entire mental health industry with this one brush as though they're Nazi psychiatrists. And I remember that I had made this video, the 6-minute video, which was essentially a video illustration of a Hubbard written essay about crime and psychiatry, talking about how psychiatry had invaded the field of mental health. Psychiatry has invaded the field of law and had somehow tainted the courts, right? So I remember this video, and I was going to do a reaction video to it, and I thought I'd just play it, right? I mean, I'm going to set it up a little bit first, but I'm just going to play it, and we can stop and we can talk about it, because I'm kind of thinking like, I have to make my own amends for having made this complete piece of bullshit propaganda. But the fact of the matter is, just to give you a little background, before I ever even heard of Scientology, I was not a friend of, I was not, good. I was not good on psychiatry. I mean, this was a field that I thought had a lot of abuses. There's a reason why, if you Google it, you can easily find a list of 100, the top 100 films that had psychiatrists as an enemy. Yeah, there's a really good reason for that. I mean, it has a very sort of violent, dark past. I mean, even like generally speaking, medical, the field of medicine has kind of dark stuff. Like they used to use leeches, and they used to, cut people open and drain their blood, and going all the way back to the Egyptians, they used to drill holes in their head and let the evil spirits out. This kind of stuff's been going on for a long time. And, so not just in psychiatry, but also in medicine. So I was never really a big fan of psychiatry, more so when I was in Scientology, because obviously, we're indoctrinated to really loathe and despise the entire mental health field. And then, I became a pretty aggressive anti-mental health field warrior. And, I was like the chief architect on the Industry of Death Museum. I've done content on that. That's a museum that travels the world, and it's like the gold standard for teaching people how evil psychiatry is. But the fact is, about 10% of the stuff in that museum is true. Like, there's some real abusive stuff. And I've had my own personal experiences with it. I mean, I have myself spent a couple of days in a psychiatric institution. I know what it's like. That's a whole, yeah, thumbs up to that. That's a long story. I'll get into it sometime, but and there are today, right now, people who are being electroshocked. Hey, look, if you know somebody who's been helped by that, great. For the most part, people who've been electroshocked don't have good outcomes. As a matter of fact, when I was researching my book, I was searching diligently for outcome studies, long-term outcome studies on people who've had ECT, and there just aren't any because nobody wants to track with it. They're still using various dangerous drugs. What do they call antipsychotic drugs? Most specifically, a drug called Haldol, which does that will damage your nervous system and give you a palsy with as little as 2 weeks of usage. This was a drug that they used as a chemical straitjacket in the Soviet Union when they'd throw dissidents in hospitals, right? But the thing is, psychiatry, there's different sects of psychiatry, just like different sects of Christianity or some religions. Some are really, really bad. I mean, the Nazi psychiatrists did some horrible things. You had the sect of psychoanalysis with Freud, and then you had, Carl Jung, who had his ideas with the shadow self and all kinds of other stuff. Then you had, like I mentioned, the Nazi psychs, and then coming more into, closer to modern times after the war, you had the lobotomies, which were very popular for a while. There was even a guy, doctor, I can't think of his name right now. He had a thing called the lobotomy mobile, and he literally used to drive through neighborhoods and give lobotomies. Like, some guy wanted to having an affair with his secretary. He needed to get his wife quieted down, so he'd get her a lobotomy. Women didn't have a lot of rights at that time, and a lot of them were lobotomized. And everybody says, well, that's over. We don't do that anymore. But they're doing other things that are very kind of similar. And they're still doing ECT, blah, blah, blah. But there's also some incredibly exciting things happening in psychiatry. There's a whole new field which has created this. It's revolutionized like the thinking between the gut brain. You've probably heard about this because they've discovered that something like, excuse me, that's just annoying. Something like 90% of the serotonin in your brain is actually produced in your gut. And there's a very, like, they're curing, like ADHD and depression by sorting out people's microbiome in their stomach. And this is part of an emerging field of psychiatry, which is called biological psychiatry. And it's extremely exciting. And it means, the end of dangerous drugs that have lots of side effects. That I read a recent study that the connection between antidepressants and depression has been broken, and it is no longer medically considered a connection between antidepressants and depressants. So hopefully we'll be able to put all this stuff away. So I want you to know, as much as I feel passionate that there should be reforms in mental health, and I myself have greatly benefited from that field, at the same time, when somebody like the Church of Scientology sponsors a group like the Citizens Commission on Human Rights, and they virtue signal their desire to like expose and modify the field of mental health, which they don't want to modify it. They want to completely destroy it and take it over. I get really angry. Like, I want to throw a beer bottle at somebody because these guys are doing that to raise money. They're doing it to get donations. It's an evil cult pointing at an evil sector of one particular profession, psychiatry. And there is a really corrupt streak going on in it. And then they're exploiting that for money. So, Yeah. Anyway, hey, so I got some people in here. That's great. Some people join me. I'm not the most popular creator in this space, but I'm trying. I want my MTV. I guess that would be Mitch TV. A few of you want it. So I really appreciate your being here before we go on. So look, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to show you this film. And yeah, no, this is absolutely 100% right. This is a message from Gray. Hello, how you doing? Happy New Year. Nice to see you. And she's referring to Scientology. They never do anything unless it benefits profit for them. Yeah, I mean, I did. That's so true. I mean, I did. The first thing I did before I worked for Gold, I did an ad, like a public service type ad for Citizens Commission on Human Rights, and it was just for fundraising. And they went to Scientologists who had money, and they said, "Hey, do you want to pay for this ad? If you give us whatever $2,500, you will have paid for the ad." And they just sold that over and over and over again. So you had hundreds of Scientologists who thought they paid for the ad. That's just how they do it. It's just really unscrupulous. So listen, we're gonna play this video. If you want me to stop, just oh yeah, I gotta just bring this up before we go on. This is from Miss Amber Sunshine. Hey Amber, welcome back. Thanks for this. But when is the cult going to admit that they've been part of creating mental health issues with their group? DM, Deceptive Man, has allowed abuses against humanity. DM is a degraded being, evil cult. This is exactly why my head exploded when I saw this article, because you're talking about a group like most people who have money and or celebrity, usually those get hand to hand, who stay within that bubble. They're treated really well and they're emotionally supported, but the staff aren't. Sea Org members especially aren't. I know that because I worked side by side with them for 30 years and I saw it. And, the higher you go up the quote unquote bridge to total freedom, the more of your own identity you're trading for this fake narrative. And that is devastating to a person's mental health. Why you'll find the higher people get up in the bridge, the harder it is for them to get out. And I think per capita, there's probably more unaliving amongst people on the top of the bridge than there is in the general population. Love Food Kitchen said, LOL, Mitch is so modest. We're here and watching. You are. You absolutely are. And yeah, I don't think I do modesty very well, but hey, so listen, if you want me to stop the film, if you can't take it, it's only 6 minutes long. Just put a note in there. But I wanted you to see this was you're going to hear an essay that L. Ron Hubbard wrote. He used to write a series of articles that were called Freedom. They put them in a newsletter called Freedom, and then that eventually became Freedom Magazine, which was supposed to, in the 2016, it was supposed to become Freedom TV, which was going to be brought to you by Scientology Media Productions, but for some reason they chickened out and they turned the network into just a bunch of what do you call them, infomercials and TV ads. So this was made for the TV station. I'm sure it's played on there, but I just had a copy of it. I'm going to find more of these essays by Hubbard that I made into films and play them, and we'll take them apart because they're not that long. Like, I'm not going to play something that's an hour or even a half hour, but 6 minutes I think is tolerable. But this is Hubbard talking about how psychiatry has gotten into law enforcement and crime and like destroyed it. And sure, we've seen some oddball things, like in the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial. We saw, Shannon Curry and that other mental health worker, that therapist. One of them diagnosed Amber Heard as being a histrionic narcissist and having borderline personality disorder, and the other one said, no. She has PTSD from being abused by Johnny Depp. So we've seen these kind of goofy things where they get into the courts and so on and so forth. But I wanted you to see firsthand what, in his own words, what his view on psychiatry is. So here we go. This is called Crime and Psychiatry. feel free to continue texting, and I may stop it and make comments. One thing I do have to say, you'll notice the pacing of the voiceover is very slow. That's because these were never written to be filmed. They were written to be read, and because they're written by L. Ron Hubbard, you cannot change a word. And so very often to put them to film, to illustrate them, you had to really slow the voiceover down to give the pictures a chance to kind of sink in and evolve. So here you go, Crime and Psychiatry, world premiere, not on the Scientology Network.
Here we see a person is not responsible for criminal conduct.
And prosecutors say there's a reason why he's a schizophrenic.
Title
He
sequence.
was insane, and therefore he shouldn't be found guilty because of his mental state.
Let me know if they need more audio, if it's too soft.
When you put criminals in charge of crime, the crime rate rises. The soaring crime statistics, which the police are battling, began to rise when the psychiatrist and psychologist moved into the field of education and law. It used to be that a crime was a crime. When a police officer did his duty was done. Now all that has changed. Criminals are maladjusted, and it is all society's fault that they are.
If anyone is responsible, it is you.
And the police officer is a beast for daring to interfere with the poor fellows.
This poor, unfortunate man has been in the system his entire life. Abandoned.
The psychiatrist and psychologist have carefully developed a lawless and irresponsible public attitude toward crime. First and foremost is that man is just a soulless animal who is not answerable for his own acts. They advertise man as a push-button stimulus response robot and claim that only they know where the buttons are. Underprivileged people always become criminals, according to these experts. So the thing to do is make the criminal a privileged being with far more rights than ordinary people. But the main fault to be found with this psychiatric and psychological influence is that these people only escape the hangman's noose by a fanfare of being above the law themselves. Crimes of extortion, mayhem, and murder are done daily by these men in the name of practice and treatment. There is not one institutional psychiatrist alive who, by ordinary criminal law, could not be arraigned and convicted of extortion, mayhem, and murder. By a mental trick, they have hypnotized some politicians into actually believing they are working in science and are above the law in that it is necessary that they commit these crimes. The brutal truth is that these people have not a clue as to what makes the mind work. If they did, they could cure somebody, couldn't they?
Great flute selection.
But they can't and don't. It is obvious, for crime stats have soared since these arch criminals wormed their way into the field of crime. If you put a complete fake in an engine room to run it, your engine room would soon be a shambles. This is what has happened in society. Instead of letting the police go about their business, a whole new hierarchy of fake experts has been superimposed on the field. Thus, there is chaos. If these psychiatrists and psychologists and their national mental health groups knew their business, then crime statistics would be falling naturally. But they are not. Crime statistics, ever since these men have taken over in courts, prisons, education, and social welfare, have soared to a point where the honest policeman is near despair. Any experienced law enforcement officer knows more about the criminal mind than any 12-year educated psychiatrist or 6-year educated psychologist. Not the smallest of their crimes is that they absorb all appropriations to rehabilitate people and actively campaign against every church and civic group that used to help with the problem. But then, real top-level criminals wouldn't want the problem of crime to be handled, would they?
Oh, there you go. You see what they did there? So, yeah, anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. But that'll give you an idea of what Scientologists are indoctrinated into in terms of how to feel about the mental health industry. I have to add freedommagazine.org, which is the web address for Freedom Magazine. They haven't published anything since 2019. I'm going to do some content on that. They had some very capable, qualified journalists working for them, professional journalists, who have all left because they basically can't stand David Miscavige. And they just can't, they wised up to the whole deal. So Freedom Magazine, which bills itself as the voice of Scientology, is essentially dead and hasn't shown any life since 2019. So I know we hear a lot about empty orgs and other kind of metrics for judging how Scientology is doing. This is really a major one. The fact that Freedom Magazine has not, that there hasn't been a new issue since 2019. Might be 2018, but it's 2019 that I know. Yeah, thanks. That was the point. It's well done visually. Yeah, and this I think I was half asleep when I did this one. You know, I may have that was, by the way, that was Love It said, wow, that was her again. So yeah, really appreciate those comments. And she says has another one here. Yeah, Love It says, I can see how people could buy into this. Yeah, you can, because the other thing is that it's so tragic about this that there are some real abuses. There is this one sort of very greedy, barbaric sect of the psychiatric industry that does do real harm and needs to be reformed. And then you have this other very harmful group. I know I already said this, but you have this very abusive and harmful group pointing to that to raise money because it says it's going to fix it, and it doesn't. So it makes it worse. It's what your philanthropic narcissist does. They do something to look good, but they don't actually intend good. And here's a comment from PD Questions. Most groups that try to monopolize authority over the mind, whether it's religion, Scientology, or even psychiatry or psychology, have cultish aspects. Yeah, and this is the worst aspect of psychiatry. I mean, I've benefited greatly from therapy. I think it's something everybody should look into. It's sort of like, even if you're super healthy, you still might want to go to the gym or start running or do something to improve yourself. And there are it's not easy to find a therapist that you can hook up with, that you sort of sync with. I hear on average, people generally go through about 5 before they find one. But I have definitely, I don't want people to think that I'm just like anti-mental health, because I'm not. And I read about this new field of psychiatry, the biological psychiatry and gut health and all that stuff, and it's just fascinating. Yeah, exactly. Punch Buggy says all legit problems, but wrong premises and solution, half truths. Yeah, and to quote that great line from Lawrence of Arabia, a man who hides the truth, a man who lies hides the truth, a man who tells a half truth forgot where he put it. And I do think at some point L. Ron Hubbard forgot where he put the truth. Yeah, here you go. Hey, Barbara, thanks for being here. One of these days, I'll remember to contact you, but I'm glad you're paying attention. I love it because it's too black. Uh, love it. I can't love it. This was at love it. I can't because it's too black and white. Psychiatrists are people. Some are good, some are not. This is absolutely a fact. The ones that are not are really bad. And although I've never really dealt with psychiatrists on a therapy or treatment level, I do know people that are really fortunate to have found a psychiatrist who actually practices some kind of therapy, psychotherapy, whatever. And they seem like very enlightened people, and they've helped folks. So let's just go on here. Let's see what we got. Yeah, this is mostly true. I think Tina in the last 20 said all scientific fields have horrific history. The science evolves as we do too. This is absolutely true. That's completely correct. I mean, look at, alchemy chemistry started with people trying to turn, egg yolks and straw into gold. I don't know how abusive they were, the early alchemists, but they might have been abusive. But yeah, I talked about earlier, the early days of psychiatry were horrific. There's in the 1800s, there's a hospital called Bethlehem, which is where the word bedlam comes from. And there was some pretty horrific stuff that went on there. And they used to, just to make money, they used to sell tickets so that the paying public could come in and see the quote unquote crazy people. Yeah, Grace says medicating people up to their eyeballs without taking a holistic approach to their life and situation is deeply irresponsible. That's right. And that's what Scientology is exploiting, that irresponsibility to make money while they're not doing anything about it. But I think, Gray, that this new field of biological psychiatry is definitely heading in the direction that you're mentioning. Leslie Bishop says, okay, I'm going to be the bad guy here, but LRH has taken the field of psychiatry. It sounds like a teenager trying to get even with someone he feels wronged with him. I don't know why you're being the bad guy here, but maybe you're being facetious, but that's absolutely true. I mean, this whole war, Hubbard's war with psychiatry probably stems back to the horrific rejection that the Dianetics book got. So, and he was kind of a very immature person who seemed sophisticated language wise, and but had very kind of childish adolescent revenge characteristics. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Barb Try said at Leslie Bishop, that's my theory. He wanted the medical and psychiatric fields to recognize Dianetics, and they called it out. They absolutely did. You can still find the American Psychiatric Association, the original reviews of Dianetics. They're pretty scathing. Worst, Barb Tries says, worst case of sour grapes ever, in my opinion. Yep. Well, yeah, this is true. Punch Buggy says alchemy was abusive in that it sold a lie as the truth. Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, they were probably quacks. Somebody asked earlier, I don't know if you saw, I responded to a comment. Somebody wanted to know about the voiceover. That's an actor by the name of Shane Johnson. He was, if you watched the show Power on BET, he was the white cop on Power. He's a good actor. He loved making him some Scientology money. He's kind of even pretends a little bit to be a Scientologist just to keep that all cool. Okay, I got a couple started ones here. Miss Amber Sunshine said, DM is a privileged criminal. Yeah, that's a fact. He sees himself as a super celebrity. And I got a question here from Denise Locker. Would you say Elleridge had major issues with the mental health issues because of his own craziness? Well, I don't know that it was logical like that, but I think his issues with it were crazy. So in that sense, they were a function of his own craziness. So I think I have some notes here. I wonder if there's anything else I wanted to cover. I just wanted to do a kind of short video. No, I think I covered pretty much everything. If you have any more questions, get them in now, because I'm going to get back to recording, and then I think I might come back later and just kind of ring in the new year, because I'm going to kind of just stay here. I'm not planning on going out anywhere. I'm just going to stay here and record, and unless people just start showing up at my door and wanting to party, shoot me a note if you're in town, because I'm just going to be here. Oh, look, it's Selena says, this is cool. I'll take it. Selena says, Happy New Year from the future. Yeah, okay. So Selena bailed out on the last stream to go celebrate the new year, and now she's coming back. It's from the future telling us. So I'm assuming that there wasn't like an apocalyptic end at the stroke of midnight, and that you're okay. Hey, love it. Hey, Happy New Year, Mitch. Thank you. You too. I really appreciate that. Leslie Bishop says, in fairness to you, Mitch, I think the film was an effective depiction of Elleridge's view. Yeah, it was. I mean, that's what I was paid for, to make these things, to push them, which is why I'm showing them to you, and I'm saying they're BS, but I appreciate that. I mean, they wouldn't have kept me around so long, paying me to like teach the org members how to do all this kind of stuff if the work wasn't decent. I just wish I would have used all that on my own stuff. Okay, great. So love it. Thank you very much again. That's a Happy New Year to all of us. Yeah. Barb Trice says, Happy New Year to you all. See you midnight in 4.5 hours, and we'll probably be asleep. Yep. Okay, guys. So here's the deal. Thanks a lot. I'm so grateful to everybody for the help and support that I've been given, for the people that read my book. I'm going to come back later. I promise you guys some Mexican food, and I made the world's best salsa. And this stuff is like, people tell me it's like crack, like you just can't stop eating it. And I mean, and in the metaphorical sense of that, it's addictive. So I think I'm just going to come on and share it with you, and just kind of ring in the new year and just do one last thing for the year. So really appreciate you all coming by. And you're going to dig this. Love it, says yummy. And I'll put the recipe. It's a recipe that I found. I mostly cook from recipes, but at least I consider that I sort of curate the recipes. Like I sort of go through a lot of recipes and find one that I think is the one that I really want to make. I'm very picky about it. And this was one from, this is a tomatillo, roasted tomatillo salsa that was from some organic gardening blog on the internet. And I'll post the recipe, because you all got to make it. So I'll be back later doing that. Until then, thanks a lot. And just remember that it's, if you ever have a chance to do anything about reforming psychiatry, take advantage of doing that. I mean, I've written letters, I've done all kinds of stuff, and because it does need help, but it is a needed and welcome field, and I've gotten so much help from it. So, okay, good. I will say hi to Weston, and I'll see you.